They got justice, they got their son back, but becoming a family after everything that was taken from them, that was the part no one could win in court. If you are new here, stop right now. Go watch part 1 and part 2 first. The links are in the description. This story will not make sense, and more importantly, it will not hit the way it needs to hit if you come to the ending without the beginning. For everyone who has been here from the start, welcome back. Drop a comment right now and tell me where you are watching from. The morning after the ruling, Juliet woke up in a Seoul hotel room and lay still for a full minute before she moved. Not because she was sad, not because she was afraid, because the silence felt different from every other silence she had woken up inside for the past 6 years, and she needed a moment to understand what was different about it. She lay there with the ceiling above her and the city beginning its noise outside the window, and she understood slowly that what was different was this. The thing she had been carrying was gone. The stone, not the small grey one Seojin had given her, the other one, the cold, invisible one she had been carrying since a recovery room in Abuja, was gone. She pressed a hand to her chest to check. It was not there. She got up. Seojin was staying in the adjoining room with the housekeeper Yimin had arranged, and when Juliet came through the connecting door at 7 in the morning, she found him already awake, sitting on the edge of his bed in his pajamas, very seriously examining a new stone he had apparently found in the hotel garden the previous afternoon and smuggled upstairs in his jacket pocket. He looked up when she came in. "Good morning," he said, with the gravity of a small diplomat. "Good morning," she said. "Did you sleep?" "Yes," he held up the stone. "This one has a line through it, a white line, perfectly straight." He turned it so she could see. "That means it was in moving water for a very long time." She sat down on the edge of the bed beside him and looked at the stone. The white quartz line ran through it like a sentence. "How do you know that?" "Appa told me." He set it down carefully on the nightstand beside the grey one she had given back to him, the original one from the garden. They sat together now, the two stones, side by side. "He says rivers teach rocks patience." She looked at the two stones on the nightstand for a moment. "Your Appa is right," she said. Seojin nodded, unsurprised, and stood up to begin the business of getting ready for the day with the organised efficiency of a child who has had a consistent morning routine and trusts it. He went to the bathroom. She heard the tap running, the specific sound of teeth being brushed. She stayed on the edge of his bed and looked at the bathroom door and listened. There were entire versions of him she had never met. The thought arrived without warning and sat in her chest with a weight that was different from grief. Not heavier, just more specific. She had missed the first word, the first step. The first question about why the sky was blue and where rain came from and what happened to people when they died. She had missed the version of him that was afraid of the dark and the version that had stopped being afraid of the dark. She had missed the first time he said Appa and the first time he laughed so hard he fell down and the first stone he ever picked up and decided to keep. She had missed all of it, and he had grown into the serious, certain, patient, extraordinary small person currently brushing his teeth in a hotel bathroom entirely without her. She sat with that. She didn't try to push it away. She had spent enough years pushing things away to know the cost. So she sat with it on the edge of his bed in the quiet, and she let it be exactly as heavy as it was. Seojin came out of the bathroom with his face washed and his pajama top damp where he had splashed water without noticing. He stood before her. "You're sad," he said, not as an accusation, as an observation. "A little," she said. "About the missed time." She looked at him. "How did you know that?" He thought about it with genuine seriousness. "Because you keep looking at me like you're adding something up," he said, "like you're trying to count something you lost." He picked up the stone with the white line and held it out to her. "Appa says time is like a river too, it doesn't go backward, but it always goes somewhere." She took the stone from his hand. She held it for a long moment. "Your Appa," she said carefully, "says a lot of smart things." "Yes," Seojin agreed without irony. "But he's not as smart as he thinks he is about some things." She laughed. It came out before she could stop it, real and warm and completely unguarded. And Seojin looked pleased with himself in the contained way he had of looking pleased, like satisfaction was something to be noted privately rather than performed. Yimin arrived at 9. He knocked. He did not assume. That, Juliet noticed, was something he had learned, or perhaps something he had always known, and was now applying with the care of someone who understands that permission matters in a way he previously did not fully live by. She opened the door, and he was standing in the corridor in smart casual clothing with a paper bag that turned out to contain Seojin's favourite breakfast from a place near the Seongbukdong house, and he said good morning to her with the measured respect of someone who was not taking up more space than he had been given. "Good morning," she said, and stepped back to let him in. The three of them ate breakfast at the small table by the window. Seojin narrated the qualities of the new stone at length. Yimin listened with complete attention, asking questions that demonstrated he had been listening to stone narratives for 5 years and had developed genuine expertise. Juliet watched both of them, the way Seojin leaned toward his father when he talked, the way Yimin's whole body oriented toward his son with an ease that spoke of years of mornings exactly like this, and she felt something complicated move through her. Not jealousy, something more honest than that. Something that said, they have a life, and I am learning its edges. He needs new shoes, Yimin said when Seojin had gone to the bathroom again. His voice was even and practical. His left one is too small, I noticed yesterday. I'll take him this afternoon, Juliet said, a brief pause. I know a good place near in Sadong, Yimin said, if you want the recommendation. Thank you, she said. They were being very careful with each other. She was aware of it and she suspected he was too, and she thought that careful was probably exactly right for where they were. Careful was not cold. Careful was the thing you did when you understood that what you were handling had been broken before and you did not want to break it again. The shoe shop near in Sadong was small and unhurried, the kind of place where the owner knew his stock and took his time. Seojin sat on a low bench while a woman measured his feet and confirmed what Yimin had noticed. The left shoe had been too small for approximately 3 weeks. Seojin had not complained. When Juliet asked him why he hadn't said anything, he considered the question. I thought it would fix itself, he said. Juliet and Yimin both looked at him, then they looked at each other. It was the first time they had looked at each other, really looked, not the careful managed glances of two people navigating shared space since the courthouse steps. Something moved in the air between them, something that recognized itself. Yimin looked away first. He cleared his throat. Things don't fix themselves, he told Seojin. I know that now, Seojin said, and went back to examining the shoe options with focused attention. Juliet looked at the wall of shoes and said nothing and felt everything. In the evenings, after Seojin was asleep, she would sit in the chair by the window of her hotel room and she would let the day settle through her. She was building a picture, piece by piece, of who her son was. The way he organized things, shoes parallel at the door, stones in order of size, his jacket always on the same hook. The way he asked questions, not impulsively but after a silence, like he had processed the question fully before deciding it was worth asking. The way he loved his father, not with the clinging dependence of an insecure child, but with the easy confidence of someone who has always known they were loved back. The way he had absorbed her arrival into his life with no drama and no adjustment period, just that first evening in the garden, and then, Mama, done, decided, she was learning him, and the learning was the most astonishing thing she had experienced since the garden. She had him back, but she was only beginning to understand what that meant. The first real friction came on a Wednesday. It was small. It was also completely inevitable. Yimin had arranged for Seojin to have lunch with 2 of his closest school friends at a restaurant near the school, something he had planned before the ruling, a standing arrangement that he had simply continued out of habit. Juliet had planned to take Seojin to a market she had read about, a place that sold handmade things and had a section of polished stones she thought he would spend a happy hour in. Both of them had told Seojin about their plans. Neither of them had told each other. Seojin stood in the middle of the hotel suite that Wednesday morning and looked from one parent to the other with the expression of a small judge. You should talk to each other, he said, before you talk to me. Then he went to look at his stones. Juliet and Yimin stood in the small kitchen area of the suite and looked at each other. I'm sorry, Yimin said. I should have communicated. I made that arrangement before. He stopped, started again. I should have told you. It's fine, she said. The market will be there another day. No, he said. It's not fine. You planned something. It matters. He paused. We need a system. If we're going to do this properly, co-parent properly, we need to communicate about his schedule. His time belongs to both of us and he shouldn't have to be the one who tells us that. She looked at him for a moment. You're right, she said. I have a calendar application, he said. I can share access. Everything I plan for him goes in it. Everything you plan goes in it. Nothing gets confirmed until we've both seen it. It was practical and organized and completely characteristic of him, and she found, to her own mild surprise, that she was not irritated by it. She was cautiously grateful. Fine, she said. Send me the access. He sent it before she finished the sentence. She suspected he had already set it up. Seojin from the other room called out, Did you decide? You're Appa's friends for lunch, Juliet called back. Mark it on Friday. A pause. Good, Seojin said, and went back to his stones. 3 weeks into the new arrangement, Yimin found a serviced apartment in Mapogu which was not, Juliet noted, the Seongbuk-dong house and not the same building as her hotel. It was a middle distance, a considered distance. He had thought about the geography of this the way he thought about everything, which was to say, completely. Juliet found a short-term furnished apartment 2 streets away. She had not told him she was looking. He had not told her he was looking. They found out about each other's moves when Seojin at breakfast one morning mentioned that he could walk between both apartments in 4 minutes if he went quickly. He had already timed it. They looked at each other over his head. Neither of them said anything, but something shifted. Something that had been held at careful distance for weeks moved just slightly towards something warmer. The park they found was in Marpo, not far from either apartment. It had a section with a small stream and a path lined with large smooth stones, and Seojin took one look at it and began treating it as a personal geological research site. He went there on Saturdays, sometimes with Yi-min, sometimes with Juliet, and then, as October deepened into the cool clarity of a Seoul autumn, sometimes with both of them. Those Saturday mornings were when Juliet began to understand what they were building. She and Yi-min walked behind Seojin on the stone path, not beside each other exactly. There was still a few inches of careful space between them, but not separated either. Seojin moved ahead, crouching to examine stones, standing to report findings, moving on. They watched him. They talked about him mostly. About the school he was attending, about the teacher who had noticed his unusual patience for a 5-year-old and wondered if he might benefit from advanced material. About the fact that he had started drawing maps, not of real places but of invented ones with careful labels and a legend in the corner. About the stone collection, which had now been organized into categories that only Seojin fully understood. Then one Saturday Seojin stopped on the path ahead of them and turned around and walked back with complete purpose. He stood between them. He looked up at his father. He looked up at his mother. Then he reached out and took both their hands simultaneously, one in each of his small ones, and turned back toward the path and began walking. Neither of them pulled away. Neither of them spoke. They just walked, the 3 of them, through the autumn park along the stone path in the October light, Seojin's small hands in their larger ones, his pace setting theirs. His certainty carrying them forward. Juliet looked down at her son's hand in hers. Then she looked across at Yi-min. He was already looking at her. His expression was the expression she had first seen in a ballroom, and then in a garden, and now here on a park path in autumn, the expression of someone who has stopped pretending that what they feel is something other than what it is. She looked forward again, but she did not let go of Seojin's hand, and neither did he. There was a moment in early November when she understood that they had already become something. She was at Yi-min's apartment for their Thursday dinner, helping Seojin with a school form that required a parent's signature. There was a line for mother and a line for father. She filled in her name on the mother line without thinking about it, just wrote it naturally, the way you write something that is simply true. Then she looked up and Yi-min was across the table filling in the father line with the same unremarkable ease. They both looked at the completed form at the same time. They had not planned this moment. It had not been constructed. It had simply arrived in the middle of a Thursday evening between a dinner and a bath time and announced itself quietly. You are already a family. You have been for a while. You just needed to see it written down. Neither of them said anything about it. But that night, after Seojin was asleep and Juliet had gone home and Yi-min was alone in his apartment, he sat at the kitchen table for a long time. And then he made a phone call to a jeweler in Bukchon Hanok village whose work he had been told about by a colleague and whose hands, he had been told, made things that lasted. It was Seojin who gave it away. Not intentionally, or perhaps intentionally, because with Seojin it was genuinely impossible to tell the difference between innocence and strategy. It was a Thursday evening and Juliet had come to Yi-min's apartment for dinner, which had become a Thursday arrangement over the previous weeks. Not romantic, just practical, the 3 of them eating together and reviewing the coming week and arguing gently about whether Seojin's stone collection needed its own dedicated shelf, which it absolutely did, but neither parent wanted to be the one to formally concede the point. Seojin was setting the table with his characteristic organized precision, fork left, knife right, glass exactly 2 finger widths from the plate, when he looked up at Juliet with the expression he got when he was about to say something he had been sitting on. Appa went somewhere today, he said. Yi-min from the kitchen went very still. Did he? Juliet said. Yes. Seojin aligned a spoon with scientific attention. He wore the dark suit, not the work one, the other dark suit. A pause. He came back with a small bag. He put it in the drawer in his room. He thought I didn't see. Seojin, Yi-min said from the kitchen. His voice was very controlled. Seojin looked at his father with an expression of perfect innocence. I'm just setting the table, Appa. Juliet looked at the kitchen doorway where Yi-min had appeared, spatula in hand, with the expression of a man whose 5-year-old has just detonated something he spent considerable time carefully constructing. She looked back at her plate. She said nothing, but she smiled just slightly, just enough. She did not ask. She did not mention the small bag or the other dark suit or the drawer in his room. She had dinner with them and helped Seojin with his bath time narration, which had reached a particularly complex plot point, involving the glowing stone and a river that ran in 2 directions simultaneously. And she said good night and went back to her apartment 2 streets away, and she lay in bed in the dark and she thought, he is planning something. And she thought, good. What Yimin had actually done that Thursday while Seojin was at school and Juliet was at a client call was spend 4 hours in the Bukchon Hanok village area with the jeweler he had been consulting for 3 weeks, a woman who made rings by hand and had listened to his entire story, or as much of it as was relevant to the task, and had understood immediately what kind of ring this needed to be. Not large, not a declaration of wealth, something that said, I chose this carefully. I chose this for you specifically, something that had warmth in it. He had also, in the preceding 2 weeks, done the following things. He had called the manager of the rooftop garden of the hotel where they had first stayed after the gala, the place with the Paulonia tree, the place where Seojin had handed Juliet a grey stone and called her mama for the first time. He had asked whether the rooftop could be made available for a private evening. The manager had said yes with the particular enthusiasm of someone who understood that the request was significant. He had arranged for the Paulonia tree, which was in November bare of its blossoms, to be surrounded by white and deep burgundy flowers instead. He had remembered without being told to remember that her gown the night of the gala had been burgundy. He was not a man who forgot things that mattered. He had arranged for a string quartet, small, unobtrusive. The kind of music that existed in the background of a moment without competing with it. He had arranged for Seojin to know, not what was happening exactly but enough. He had sat with his son one afternoon and said, I am going to ask Mama something important on Saturday, something I should have asked a long time ago. And Seojin had looked at him with the expression of someone receiving information they already possessed and said, I know Appa. And then, make sure there are flowers, she likes warm colours. He had made sure there were flowers. On Saturday, Juliet received a message from Yimin at 4 in the afternoon. It said, Seojin wants to show you something at the hotel garden, can you come at 6? Wear something you like. She read the message twice, she knew, she was fairly certain she knew. And the knowing did not diminish anything, it expanded everything because she had time to sit with it for 2 hours, time to understand what she felt about it, time to choose. She wore the burgundy. Not the gown from the gala, that was an evening gown, and this was something different, something new but burgundy nonetheless. A deep, warm dress that she had bought in Seoul 3 weeks ago for no reason she had named at the time. She wore her hair down. She put on the diamond earrings. She looked at herself in the mirror for a long moment and she thought, this is the face of someone who has decided. She walked to the hotel. The lobby staff greeted her with the careful warmth of people who have been briefed. She was directed to the elevator, the rooftop level. When the elevator doors opened, she stepped out into the November evening air and stopped. The rooftop garden was strung with hundreds of small warm lights, not the cold white of commercial lighting but something amber and close, the kind of light that makes everything it touches look like the most important version of itself. The Paulonia tree stood bare and beautiful in the center, its winter branches lit from below, and around its base a wide circle of flowers had been arranged, white and deep burgundy and cream, full and extravagant and deliberately, specifically warm. Along the low garden walls, more flowers, candles in glass holders on every surface. The small string quartet she had not yet noticed began playing something she recognized distantly as the first piece of music she had ever told Yimin she loved, in a conversation in a corporate cafe a lifetime ago, when he had told her she was wrong about jazz and she had told him the specific piece that had changed her mind. He had remembered. Seojin was standing beside the Paulonia tree in a small formal suit, the same kind of contained gravity he brought to everything, holding a single stem of deep burgundy flower, which he extended toward her as she approached with the ceremony of a small ring-bearer who has taken his role extremely seriously. For you, he said. She took it. Her hand was not entirely steady. Thank you, she said. You're welcome, he said. And stepped to the side with the neat deliberateness of someone executing a plan. Yimin was there. He was wearing the other dark suit, the one Seojin had noticed. He was standing in the warm light of the rooftop garden with the amber glow catching the angles of his face, and he looked not like the cold, controlled, untouchable man who had stood with a whiskey glass in a ballroom 2 seasons ago. He looked like the man she had met in a gallery in Hongdae, the one who had taken her hand without announcement because he had run out of reasons not to. He looked entirely present. Entirely himself, he walked toward her. He stopped close, closer than careful, close enough that she could see the particular steadiness in his eyes that meant he was not performing anything, that everything in front of her was real and chosen and had been chosen for a long time. "I had a speech," he said. "I know you did," she said. "You probably wrote 3 drafts. 4, he said. He reached into his jacket pocket, not for the speech. "But I decided not to use it. Because the most important things I have ever said to you were the unrehearsed ones, and I want this to be the most important thing I have ever said to you." He held the ring. It was exactly what it needed to be. A thin band of warm gold, hand-formed, slightly irregular in the way of things made by human hands rather than machines. The stone was a deep amber, not a diamond, not a performance of wealth, a warm glowing amber stone that caught the rooftop lights and held them. It was the colour of the light around them. It was the colour of something that had been through pressure and heat and come out on the other side as something worth looking at. Juliet, her name in his voice, said the way he said it when there was nothing else to hide behind. "I have spent a long time understanding the cost of what I failed to do. I am not here to apologise again. I am here because I know who we are when we are with him. I know what Saturday mornings are and what 2 streets apart means and what it means that you wear burgundy on an evening when I asked you to wear something you like." He paused. His jaw was very steady. His eyes were not. "I love you. I have loved you since a gallery in Hongdae, and I loved you badly and at too great a cost to you, and I intend to spend the rest of whatever you give me doing it correctly." He lowered himself. He knelt. One knee on the rooftop garden path in the amber light, in front of the flowers and the bare Paulonia tree, and the string quartet playing the piece she had told him she loved, and his son standing to the side holding a burgundy stem with the expression of someone who has been waiting for this specific moment for longer than anyone realized. "Will you marry me?" Yimin said. "Not to fix the past, not because of him, though he is the best thing either of us will ever do. But because you are the person I want to choose every day going forward, and I am asking you properly to let me." Juliet stood in the amber light with a burgundy flower stem in her hand and looked at the man kneeling before her. She looked at her son, who was watching her with his serious certain eyes and the expression of someone who already knows the answer and is simply waiting for the rest of the room to catch up. She looked at the ring, she looked at Yimin. "We're not starting from the beginning," she said. Her voice was steady and warm and completely clear. "What we've been through is part of this. I'm not leaving it at the door." "I know," he said, "and if we do this it's because we both choose it, every day, not just tonight." "Every day," he said, "starting with this one." She looked at him for one more moment, then she held out her hand. He put the ring on her finger. His hands, she noticed, were not entirely steady either. She found that she loved him for that, for the unsteadiness, for the proof that this was costing him something real, for the fact that he was kneeling in the November cold on a hotel rooftop and shaking slightly and not trying to hide it. He stood. They looked at each other. Seojin walked over with his burgundy stem and stood between them and looked up. "Good," he said, with complete satisfaction. "Then, can we eat now? I'm hungry." Juliet laughed first, then Yimin, then Seojin, who had clearly been holding the line for a while and was very pleased with its effect. The string quartet shifted into something warmer. The amber lights held the rooftop in their glow. The Paulonia tree stood bare and patient in the center of it all, waiting for spring. He smiled, not the contained, controlled, socially calibrated expression of Kang Yimin at a business function. A real one. The kind that started in the eyes and moved through the whole face before he could do anything about it. The kind that meant something. There was a moment, 2 weeks later, at a small family photography session that Seojin had requested with the organized specificity of someone who had been planning it. Juliet and Yimin were standing on either side of Seojin in the Mapo Park on the stone path in the November light. The trees had gone golden. The small stream beside the path moved quietly over its stones. "A little closer," the photographer said. They stepped in. No pause, no hesitation, no calculation of the appropriate distance. They simply moved toward each other because they were being asked to, and because it was natural, and because the space between them had been narrowing, carefully and honestly, for months, and this was simply where they were now. Seojin looked up at both of them. He reached up and took their hands, one in each of his. He looked at the camera with the expression he brought to everything important, serious and certain, and already somewhere the rest of the world was still trying to reach. The photographer said, "Perfect, don't move." The shutter clicked. And in the photograph that came back 3 days later, the one Juliet set on the nightstand beside the 2 stones, the grey one and the one with the white line through it, 3 people stood on a stone path in autumn light. A Nigerian woman with high cheekbones and a full smile that had taken 6 years and 1 small boy to fully come back. A Korean man with his jaw slightly softened and his eyes entirely present in a way they had not been in any photograph taken of him in the previous 6 years. and between them one small hand in each of theirs, a 5-year-old boy who had known from the beginning how this story ended. They didn't get the beginning they deserved, but they chose the rest of the story, together. If you have been here since part 1, if you watched Juliet freeze in that ballroom, if you sat with her in that recovery room in Abuja, if you felt the weight of that grey stone, then you know this ending was earned. Every word of it. Hit that like button right now if this story gave you something. Subscribe if you are not already here because there are more stories like this one and you do not want to miss a single one. And leave me one comment. What was the moment in part 3 that finally broke you open? Was it Seojin saying, "Can we eat now?" The ring on her finger, or was it that last photograph? Tell me below. I read every single one, and I will see you in the next story.